Hi, this is Shannon Ringenbach, and I'm from Arizona State University. And I've been studying people with Down syndrome and their motor control for over 20 years now. And most recently, I've been interested in older adults with Down syndrome. Maybe that's because I'm getting older and my parents are getting older, but I think that it's very important for their independence to study their fine motor control in older adults with Down syndrome. And I did this project with 3 of my doctoral students and 2 undergraduate students, and it was funded by Project Honeybee at ASU's Center for Sustainable Health. Fine motor control is important in so many daily tasks. For example, eating, dressing, self-care, like shaving in the picture, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, handwriting, typing, or using your cell phone, which older adults with Down syndrome use a lot. Organizing currency, using currency, getting it out, putting it in machines. All of this is extremely dependent on fine motor control. There has also been some research in adults with Down syndrome that have shown that their brain structures that control fine motor control skills are smaller and have less myelination and fewer neurons. Also, fine motor skills are developed slower, less consistently, and later in their lives. One of the ways we could improve fine motor control is through exercise interventions, although there hasn't been very many. One study that we did in my lab was an 8-week assisted cycling therapy intervention where they're on a stationary bicycle and you set the rotations per minute or the rate of movement, and a mechanical motor moves their legs at least 35% faster than they can on their own. And we also compared that to voluntary cycling where they just pedaled at their self-selected rate. And we did this in adolescents with Down syndrome and found improvements in the left hand after assisted cycling therapy and voluntary cycling. But what hasn't been done is exercise interventions in older adults with Down syndrome and measured their fine motor control. So for the current study, in the assisted cycling therapy group, there were 13 older adults with Down syndrome. You can see their mean chronological age and mental age, which was measured with the Peabody picture vocabulary. And in the voluntary cycling, there were 10 participants. And again, they chose a self-selected rate. And we had a no cycling control group, and there were only 2 participants, and they did the pre-test and the post-test, but didn't change anything or didn't see us in between the 8 weeks. The dependent measure to measure fine motor control, we use the Purdue pegboard. It assesses unimanual and bimanual dexterity. There are pegs and washers and holes at the top, and you take a peg from a hole and put it in a hole going down the board, starting away from you and towards you. We do that with the right hand, the left hand, both hands simultaneously, and then there's a more advanced task that requires coordination between the 2 hands where you build towers. There were 3 trials per condition. Each trial was 30 seconds. The tower building trials were 60 seconds. So in the top right-hand corner, you can actually see the Purdue pegboard apparatus. It is fairly simple. And the dependent measure is just the total number of pegs placed in the 30-second limit. So the vertical axis on each of these graphs is the same. It's the total number of pegs placed. On the horizontal axis is exercise type or group, because it's a between group design. And then the black bars are the pre-testing. The gold bars are the post-testing after 8 weeks of 3 times a week cycling for these groups. And so in the left hand, we can see that there were improvements in the left hand performance only in the group that did assisted cycling therapy. And on the graph to the right, we can see that there were improvements in the right hand only for the group that did voluntarily cycling. And the bottom 2 graphs are more both hands, so both hands simultaneously. And we see that both exercise interventions improved fine manual control. And RLB stands for the right hand plus the left hand plus both. It's more of a composite score. And we see very similar findings as we did in the both hands together, improvements following an exercise intervention. This research is consistent with previous research with adolescents in our lab. We did find left hand improvements following the assisted cycling therapy. It's also consistent with research with Parkinson's disease patients using assisted cyclotherapy and measuring a bimanual dexterity force control task. What's interesting about this is that the only thing that was exercised were the lower extremities, but we see improvements in upper extremity motor control. So the model then that's displayed helps explain this. When you move your legs really quickly, you trigger the release of feedback. You get lots of feedback from Golgi tendon organs, muscle spindles, other receptors in the knees and the hips and the ankles, and those send information to the brain, and then the brain releases, that triggers the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factors, dopamine, and some other neurotrophic factors. And we know that when you get an increase in these neurotrophic factors, you can create neurogenesis or neuroplasticity. And this model predicts that that change happens in some of these different structures of the brain, specifically for fine motor control, the prefrontal cortex, the brain stem, the cerebellum, and the basal ganglia. And that ends up in improvements in manual dexterity. So just to finish off then, we can see how important improving fine motor control is for the activities of daily living for older adults with Down syndrome. And I think this research is really promising, and I look forward to doing some more research and sharing some more with you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.